Joining me now, Alice Stewart is a CNN political commentator, Republican strategist, and former communications director for Ted Cruz. So good to have you with us, Alice. Mr. Donald Trump speaking at CPAC, addressing a very supportive crowd. What stood out to you from his speech?
Well, clearly this was his crowd. This is inside baseball, red meat message for the people in the crowd there. And look, they were going to be on his side really no matter what he said. I was really surprised at the message that he gave in terms of he's really taking the fight to not just the Democrats and President Biden, but also what he calls the fake news media and rhinos, Republicans in name only, and naming certain Republicans by name in terms of people that he feels as though are not loyal to the party, which in turn means loyal to him. And also throwing a lot of red meat in there to the crowd in terms of going after woke policies of the Democrats and really going above and beyond and saying the Democratic policies are tantamount to socialism and communist policies. But that's exactly what this crowd wanted to hear. And clearly they were really responsive to what he had to say. And it was obviously evident in the straw poll that they had at this event where he received more than 60% of the vote of the crowd here, and Ron DeSantis far behind with about 20% of the vote. But keep in mind, CPAC has turned from what it used to be in years past. When I worked on several presidential campaigns, CPAC was the place for Republicans and conservatives to go and give their message to this crowd and talk about Republican policies and talk about how we can unite together to take on the Democrats. CPAC has turned into TPAC, the Trump Political Action Committee, and these people are more about dividing the Republican Party in terms of who are rational mainstream Republicans and who are Trump Republicans. And it's really unfortunate because what we have done, instead of bringing the party together ahead of a major presidential election, this is really laying the groundwork for dividing the party amongst itself, as opposed to taking the message to Democrats.
Alice, let's talk about the straw poll. Donald Trump, as you mentioned, running for president again, and he dominated this event's annual straw poll, winning by 62% of the vote. Ron DeSantis, a distant second at 20% support. Does that mean that Trump is the strongest candidate to run for president? And what does it mean for Ron DeSantis as an alternative for Trump?
Well, he was certainly the strongest candidate in the room today, Layla, and probably over the last 4 days. Remember, Ron DeSantis did not go to CPAC. He chose not to speak there. He was certainly invited, but he chose not to speak there, as well as some other high-name Republicans, such as Mike Pence and Tim Scott. Others have recognized CPAC as more of a place really that is loyal to Donald Trump, and their time is best served elsewhere. Many of them went down to the state of Florida to speak with a group called Club for Growth, which is an anti-tax group. And they see that as more of the place to go to move their message forward. And what we're seeing is, while a lot of people at this event over the last few days are strong Trump supporters, as evidenced by the straw poll, many in the Republican Party are realizing that it's time to turn the page. We're looking at the fact that with Donald Trump in the White House, we lost the House and the Senate. Of course, we regained the House, but we lost the House and the Senate and the White House due to his leadership, in large part because of his election denying and his conspiracy theorists.
But as we've seen now at CPAC, Mr. Trump can still count on a very vocal, supportive base. Is the GOP, does it have to brace itself for a long, acrimonious primary battle?
We should. And I think primaries are important. A robust primary where the candidates come together and debate the issues is healthy for the party, but also for democracy. And this is also a good way to test the policies of these different candidates, but also check their retail politics skills. How can they go to these early states and connect with the people? So I think a strong, robust primary is good for the Republican Party because That way we have the best candidate to go against whoever the Democrats put forth.
Alice Stewart, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Laila.